Welcome to the Independent Workforce, the podcast where we explore the now and the future of work through the lens of temporary employment, such as freelancers, contractors, fractional experts, you name it. Here we speak with CEOs, recruiters, founders, and industry leaders about how they work with independent talent, the wins, the challenges, and the lessons learned. My name is Yurii. I'm growing the freelance market at FreelancerMap, an international platform that's been connecting top independent professionals with companies for over 20 years. And my guest is Glen Hodgson, the founder of Trade Europa, a think tank championing openness, free trade, and ethical policymaking across Europe, and the Freelance Movement, a platform uniting honest companies, policymakers, and freelancers, of course, to shape a fair and thriving platform economy. So welcome, Glen.
Welcome indeed to you, and it's great to be on, Yurii. Thank you for having me. It's always great to talk to you and share thoughts, ideas, knowledge on this growing sector that we've been championing for a long time.
Very much likewise. You've been in this topic for so many years. I feel like you know everything. And since you use the word growing, tell me a little bit more from your perspective. What's happening on the freelance market, on this independent talent market in Europe?
Yeah, well, there's a lot going on at the moment. We've got sort of first, I think it's the increasing push of individuals, not just millennials and Gen Z, but also older workers as well, who are seeing or having their eyes opened to the possibilities of freelance work, fractional careers, and basically sort of opening their eyes to the fact that there are multiple ways to earn money when, where, and how you want. And I think a lot of this as well is also fueled by the fact that the myth of a 9-to-5 job as somehow being more safe, more secure, more permanent has definitely been busted in recent times. Across sectors, across industries, we've seen massive layoffs and individuals being forced into a rethink of what is stable, what is basically a way of moving yourself forward. And in the same way that you probably wouldn't buy just one stock if you're on the stock market business, you'd have a more sort of balanced portfolio. I think people are realizing the fact that having sort of several income streams, several ways of making money is something that is actually good for them. It's good for the present, but also it's good for the future as a hedge against risk and economic and social volatility. But it's also an opportunity for them to actually sort of learn more knowledge, expertise, because this whole idea of reskilling and upskilling is so important. People want to sort of stay relevant. They want to actually sort of take more responsibility for themselves in terms of how they can learn as a lifelong learning approach, but also the value that they could offer to companies and organizations. So their value to the marketplace is crucial. But at the same time, and we've talked about this for a long time, the fact that people want more freedom, they want more flexibility, both in terms of their lifestyle and their work style. And the kind of the blurring of the two is there. But I think people want to make money out of their passion, things that they really feel sort of drawn to, as opposed to a job as being a traditional 1950s, 1960s vision of something that must be endured just to earn money, just to pay the bills and nothing more.
You know, and it sounds like more from the individual side, and also a little bit feels like a contrary to what companies really want. They want to own people. They want them to sit in the offices. So what's in it for companies? What's in it in this growing economy for end clients, for those who hire these independent talents?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, it's the element, Yurii, that they need to be able to adapt to the reality. If you want the best coders, if you want the best lawyers, a lot of these individuals now will not accept sort of a traditional full-time contract. They want more of a fractional approach. So I think it's in light and self-interest to attract the best talent in terms of flexible working schemes, but also maybe more project-based is something that aligns. But also I think for companies and organizations, it's a case of being more productive and rational, both in terms of being able to get yourself in terms of bringing people in to projects on a very sort of specific basis. So here's a project with a clear beginning, clear middle, and a clear end. We can show that we've actually been able to deliver something, as opposed to hiring people on a sort of 35-hour-a-week contract. Sometimes they're sat around, sometimes they're maybe not fully employed. So it's a productivity gain for the companies and organizations as well when sort of the times are tight. And I think it's also a sort of more blended team approach, which is becoming more relevant for companies too. The fact that there's a blend of full-time employees, contractors, freelancers, open talent solutions. So you can bring in the knowledge and expertise and skills that are needed when and where it's necessary. And I think that Richard Tabakawala talks about sort of the Hollywood producer, Hollywood director model, whereby if you're shooting a film, you bring together a set of actors, you've got a director, a writer, producers, you've got the camera crew, the catering crew, you've got the sort of the people who get the locations and the wardrobe, and then they disband after that movie. Maybe they come together on something else. But this idea of actually bringing together the best in class and creating the team that is best placed to be able to deliver value and deliver on a project, I think something is absolutely crucial, and sort of coming more into the everyday way of life for companies and organizations who need to rationalize, who need to make their money go further and actually be able to deliver on the resources and inputs that they have.
It's interesting that you mentioned about like collecting the freelancers and working on one project, because I just yesterday listened to the Human Cloud podcast hosted by Matt Matola with
Yeah,
Nuri.
great stuff.
And
Yeah.
Yurii will be also the guest in the future episodes here also. And he told us very interesting thing that platforms currently that exist on the market, the freelance independent talent platforms, they propose just one person for one thing, but he's like, what they're missing out is on creating projects, like creating teams. So for example, you have a project and you are not just hiring one person, but it proposes you like 5-6 people who are complementary, like the full team that can work together. And I can imagine that company, and at some point, if you want to try something and you have people sitting in your office, they are doing some daily like tasks, they work on like ongoing projects, but we want to test, you want to play with something. You hire this small team and give them a task, give them a project, and you play with it. And afterwards, you can either continue with them or you can like move this project to your internal team, and it's totally okay. So it's kind of like the faster way to test hypotheses. It's the faster way to try new things, because sometimes it's not that easy to take people from their full day work and try some things inside.
Yeah. And I think sort of the C-suite more and more is getting used to this. And I think sort of realizes the benefits of it. I think there's still kind of a bit of a barrier from HR and legal, who, in some cases, there are a few sort of gray zones that need to be addressed, but I think they're all doable. But this kind of more conservative mindsets from these parts of the organization that are more familiar with the traditional route and maybe a little bit more skeptical, a little bit more resistant to this trend that is more efficient and more productive for the organization.
Tell me a little bit about your personal story, about your background. Like, what role do you play in freelance market? How do you do this? And what is your personal goal?
Well, first of all, I think sort of the whole starting point for this is out of my the lens of my own experience. So I started out before freelancing. I wouldn't say before freelancing was the thing, but certainly well before COVID, when this was something that was a little bit strange. The whole idea of a full-time 9-to-5 job was standard for the majority of people. But I realized that sort of freedom and flexibility, but also the strength of being able to work with different clients, different partners on interesting projects and being able to deliver value to that was something that was very important, particularly within sort of the policy and the communication space. But then I think it was, and it sort of started Trade Europa as the think tank, as you said. And then there's an offshoot from that was because I was doing sort of future of work papers, articles, studies, getting together with a few sort of platforms, companies, organizations who said, well, look, things are changing. No one really understands it, particularly from the media and the political sphere. Can we not get together some kind of stakeholder initiative where we can actually profile and highlight some of the things that are actually going on, both in terms of education on the reality of the present as well as the future of work, but also trying to help to shape some of the policy which was coming up that wasn't targeted. Because one of the things we see very often is that in a lot of markets still, the voice of industry comes through the sort of the trade bodies, the employers federations, and then supposedly the voice of labor comes through the trade unions, but increasingly there's more and more of us who are sort of freelance. We're not maybe in a union, we're not into this organized way of doing things, but we have our own communities, we have our own groups, we share knowledge and expertise much more than traditional employees do, who have this mindset of, this is mine. If I share anything, then basically it'll be an advantage to someone else. I need to sort of ring fence it and be very sort of jealously guarding my skills and my knowledge. Whereas in my experience, it's quite the opposite for freelancers. We're very open to share best practice. We're very open to share worst practice in terms of things that don't work, both in terms of running the business, the setup of this work style and lifestyle. So that's something I think is really strong. And I think that now, the European Commission's very conservative figures are 43 million freelancers and platform workers within the European Union. That's a big number, and it's actually sort of increasing all the time. So I think that we need to be listened to in terms of the policy, the social schemes, everything that makes sure that we're actually included within this, as opposed to ignored when it comes to rights, responsibilities, any kind of social security, safety net elements that are maybe given to our full-time employees. We should actually benefit from those. All we want is a level playing field. We don't want to be seen as something less or taken away from some of these sort of benefits and things that should be allocated to us just because we've chosen a different work style.
When you have those conversations with government representatives or companies or like you name it, what is the response? What are the main blockers they tell you that prevents them from finally understanding and acknowledging that, yes, there is this force, we need to deal with it and we need to work with it?
I think one of the big problems, it's so diverse. So, you use terms like freelancer, solopreneur, one-person companies. And the reality is it can be everything from an IT programmer, it can be a marketing professional, it can be a lawyer or an architect, it can also be a musician or an artist. So there's so many sectors, there's only so many forms of work, and there is no collective within that in terms of it's so different in terms of what is an everyday job, what does it look like? And also I think the element is that sort of freelancers by nature are very independent. They want to be able to follow their own path, create their own present and create their own future. And I think are less likely to be drawn towards sort of groups in the sense of organizing just to look at policy. The organization is much more sort of a community sphere in terms of sharing best practice, sharing ideas, sharing knowledge, as opposed to sort of trying to push for any sort of policy or legislative gains within that. But I think the realization is slowly dawning on the politicians now that something is actually happening. The labor market of today is very different from it was in the 1950s, 1960s. And the needs of individuals is actually evolving along with that. So I think it's slowly but surely the viewpoints and the realization. As always, it drags a little bit behind the reality, but I think it's getting there in terms of waking up to the reality of what's happening in the labor market and society of today, Yurii.
I will ask you this one question that really includes three inside. So what can we do? And by saying we, I mean like freelancers as individuals, companies as end clients, and also those who are in between, like staffing agencies, platforms, and etc. Everyone who connects freelancers and end clients. What can we all do, like separately, to fast forward the growth of this market?
I think we need to be sort of very good at vocalizing what we're doing. And I think it falls to people like you and me, Yurii, because of the fact that we are kind of aggregators. I'd say we're also curators of the knowledge and the stories and what's actually happening. Because a lot of freelancers, they're, as you know, you're doing everything. You're doing the work, you're doing the marketing, you're doing the administration, the accounting, some of the legal stuff, running the business on a daily basis, and that takes up probably 120% of your time. And therefore there's limited abilities. But I think that because we have such a broad and deep network in terms of geographical, but also the sectors, but also the knowledge that we've accrued, I think it's very important for us to be able to be that curator and aggregator towards the decision makers and opinion formers to basically take the temperature on what's actually happening and articulate some of the fears, the worries, the needs, the wants of the freelancer community.
And what can companies do?
Well, companies, I think, need to also be a bit more realistic in terms of explaining what their business model is. Because people talk about the fact that sort of freelancing, open talent, and contractors is something very new. It's been around for a long time, and the biggest organizations are often the ones who are actually the biggest users of freelance and open talent and contractors, but they just don't talk about it. So this is certainly not the reserve of SMEs and startups. It's more likely to be something that is utilized by big business. So I think the onus is a little bit on them, is to actually get them involved, get them vocal, and to talk about some of the issues that are relevant for the freelance community, because it is again, it's part of the same ecosystem. It's enlightened self-interest for them as well, because they're using more and more freelancers and contractors in their business model. They need to be able a viewpoint and actually sort of help to push the views and needs of the freelancer community.
This episode of The Independent Workforce is brought to you by Freelancer Map, the home of freelancing. Whether you are looking to hire top freelance talent fast or a freelancer ready to find your next big project, Freelancer Map connects the right people with the right work. No endless job boards, no guesswork, just direct access to verified experts and opportunities across the globe. Visit freelancermap.com and start building your next success story today. You know, it sounds very like a little bit of like a fairy tale that there is something is not going right, but then there is this magic thing happens and everyone is happy. But like the real life is a little bit different. And what I hear a lot, and it's like one of the main blockers of working with independent talent, is this mindset of like, how can I trust them? How can I control them? How can I ensure that they are delivering a good work? How can I ensure that they are not taking my intellectual property and put it into the competitors, etc., you name it. So what is the easiest, like the first step that companies, that end clients, that people who can hire those freelancers, those independent talents, what is the first step they can take to deal with this mindset, to break this stigma?
Yeah, and I agree. And I think this is something that does come up very often still, because it's as human beings, we're very sort of, if not scared, then certainly reticent and wary of the unfamiliar, the things that are new and potentially disruptive. So I think this is the part played within this. But I think one of the big elements here is the whole idea of getting a relationship, building it over time, but also starting small with little projects, build them up once the sort of the trust and the comfort and the reality, what is the value that can actually be given in that over time. But also I think to be able to facilitate that, it's getting good contracts in place. So having a freelancer contract between a company and an organization or a small company, to be able to make sure that it's right. So if you've got very specific worries about intellectual property, I think given the fact that knowledge is almost free and almost ubiquitous these days, that's a very old-fashioned way of looking at a lot of things. But also, if there are worries about these kind of things, why not write that into the contract that you have in place with the individual? Be very specific and concrete in terms of the rules, the obligations, so that can actually sort of secure for the internal audience, particularly HR and legal. But at the same time, it can also help to also really define the remit and the framework of the assignment that the freelancer or the contractor has. And I think this helps both sides by having as much clarity as possible in terms of what's going to be delivered, what's the price, what's the time frame, what's the do's and don'ts of this. so that the maximum benefit can be gained for both parties within that relationship.
And that's if we're talking about contracting. And I feel like it's the easiest part. But what if we are talking about compliance? Sometimes when you hire a full-time employee, it can take months to check all the things about the person that you can actually hire them. And freelancers won't wait months for go through this checking. So how can companies deal with compliancing?
I think compliance is something that's increasingly going to be outsourced to third parties. I think that when companies have sort of their bench strength, they have a group of experts, freelancers that they can call upon for specific things. That's a great situation, and that's the best place that they need to be. But if we're starting from a position whereby we need some skills, I think sort of utilizing a third party, whether it's a platform, whether it's a body that can actually, be that interlocutor that has done the due diligence, who has basically done all the checks, is basically a filter for the talent, so that if you go through this platform, you can actually sort of get the talent that you need, meets the requirements, that someone's vetted all this talent in advance. I think there's a clear opening for that at the moment. And that's kind of moving away from the kind of Fiverr Upwork model where you've got this sea of individuals. Some of it's good, some of it's average, some of it's pretty bad. And it's kind of this potluck approach to taking on freelance talent. I think this is something that really needs to be moved beyond, because there's increasing numbers of potential employers who are just moving away from these platforms because it just doesn't meet their needs. There's too much of a scale of good to bad, and there's no way of checking really, apart from some of the ratings, which also can be inflated or shall we say suspect in some cases. So I think a reliable partner who could be a platform as a third party, as a barrier, as a filter, to basically ensure that the quality of the talent that's being brought on can actually sort of meet the needs of the one who needs the project or assignment complete.
Am I hearing it correctly that you don't really have as a client to deal with all these things such as compliance, contracting, invoicing, etc., that you can literally delegate it to people, to companies who were doing it for years already, and it's not that hard?
Yeah, and also internationally as well. I mean, there's the fact, I want this person, but they're based in Moldova, or they're based in Chile. These things are more complicated. I don't want to have to deal with the compliance, the work assignments, all these kind of things to bring someone on board. But we're seeing an increasing number of companies and platforms who will actually do that work for you, sort of take all the headaches and the hard administrative processes out of that, and allow you to be able to access the people that you need as well. And I think this is something that's just going to increase over time, because the need is there. And I think that compliance and that risk element is the big and probably the largest barrier at the moment that is stopping the increase in turning more towards freelance talent.
So we talked a lot about like compliance, contracting, mindset shifts. So from the freelancer side, what are the most common frustration they face when they work with companies?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of issues like that. I cover these in. I'm going to go. There's the work reconstructed. There's the book as well. We talk about some of these elements within this, and I think that is a clear area that we're looking at sort of more and more here, because there are lots of problems that we do have with these kind of areas as well. And I think the big thing that always comes up to me increasingly is the idea of not being treated fairly and late payments. So when you're working with a company or organization, freelancers who don't have the runway and maybe the buffer that some even SMEs or larger companies have, the constant chasing to be paid. Some companies say, well, it's only a few €1,000, but for a smaller contractor or organization, that's the difference between able to pay your bills that month or not. And I think this realization that you've got someone on the other end of it, they've got their obligations as well, and the late payment piece is very much a problem, which is infecting the whole sector and discourages a lot of people from the freelancing community, sadly, on that basis. I also think it's this element of, still the fact that the idea that, well, you're a freelancer because you can't get a real job or a proper job. When are you gonna turn to that? It's still this mindset thing in society, which is certainly less than it was sort of 10, 15 years ago, but it's still there in certain quarters. And I think this is something that is a little bit of a barrier for individuals themselves, and they feel sort of being pushed into the category of a second-class citizen in some cases, unjustly, and it's incorrectly. But I think this is something that kind of infects a little bit the sector as well. And I think it's also the fact that that being dealt with and treated differently by the financial community. So if you've got to go to your bank or financial institution, they'll lend you money on the basis of, look, this is your sort of salary, this is your contract that you've got, we'll give you X amount of money. But if you're a freelancer and you show, well, I got this month and this month, the kind of income which goes in peaks and troughs, they're much more reticent to lend you money, in some cases to insure you. So I think the being treated badly by the financial sector is something that really worries people. But also as well when it comes into the fact of some of the social security and some of the provisions there. In some countries and some geographies, when you're a freelancer, having access to things like social security payments, maternity leave, paternity leave, some of the remote work obligations or abilities are actually sort of taken away from you. Some of the pension pieces, some of the health security. So it's these kind of social things that are part and parcel in a lot of countries of a traditional job, a traditional 9 to 5. The lack of that is a worry for a great number of freelancers on that basis. And I think also the element of just being seen as something different and outside the traditional workforce. This is something as well which is I think problematic for a number of freelancers, and it's kind of they're doing their thing, they're delivering value, but they're seen as being something a little bit less, a little bit second class. I think that's also a big problem and a big barrier and a concern for me.
To your point, I think yes, many companies think that freelancers are those who are needed for some leftovers, and at some point it's fine. Yeah, it's okay. You have some tasks that you don't know how to do or you don't want to deal with. Yeah, freelancers can do that for you. You can just pay them. They are professionals. They will do it. No worries. And also, it was so fun when you told about this. When you're a freelancer, they tell get a job. But then when you're I'm a business owner, like, oh wow, you're a business owner. But nobody knows what business do you really run. So I feel like also from the freelancer side, it's good to treat your freelancing as a business, because you are a business owner. And I feel like it also moves the needle, because when you talk to a company, as I'm running my professional business, I'm running my one person advertisement agency or one person development studio, and I feel like it's also shifts the needle, and it's kind of helps companies to understand, oh, okay, this person is professional. It's not like some just one-stop shop and we cannot trust, we cannot work with them. And also to a point, to have this intermediary, someone in between who you can trust. And once again, usually intermediary is not another freelancer, it's just some staffing recruiting company that have hundreds and thousands of connections and a lot of employees. And it's also as big as potential clients are. And they're kind of collaborating on the same level. And then these companies are collaborating with freelancers and connecting these two worlds. So I feel like they're also very, very important part of this ecosystem, of this world of independent talents. And still, I'm curious, where do you see the biggest misalignment between companies' expectation, between clients' expectations, and freelancer?
I think the biggest mismatch is still this idea of what is a role, what is a job, what can be delivered. And I think thinking this mismatch between the traditional idea of a role and a title, as opposed to the value that you can bring to a company or organization. This is still the thing where we need to get sort of closer together, because companies still think in terms of roles and titles, whereas increasing the freelancer community is more thinking in terms of projects, the value that I can add, what can I actually do in terms of change for this institution. And I think that's really, that value element is much more where we're going and the market's going. But I think that sort of companies are still a little bit stuck in the old mindset of a job in the sort of old-fashioned sense of it.
What companies are missing? What they okay? So we were told a lot of about the benefits of hiring freelancers, but what is another side? So what companies will miss if they don't start working with flexible talent now?
Well, I think the biggest thing, Yuri, is the fact they won't be able to access the best talent. We see the figures from across Europe and globally that the number of companies who are struggling, who can't find the talent that they need, specifically in sort of the technology space. But it goes across the board. There's a great number of sectors which just can't find the talent they need, regardless of the employment or unemployment rates of the country. They're just not around. So I think this need to be more flexible, to actually sort of think as an open talent model, maybe sort of a part remote hybrid model as well, to be able to attract the right talent, knowledge, and expertise that the companies need, will be forced upon them, because this shortage can't go on. And I think that it's either a case of training up individuals within the organization to meet those needs, and that's long, slow, and expensive, or else actually sort of changing the model to be able to access what you want when you want it.
But do they need the best talents? I'm asking because I have some friends who are working in different corporates, and they say like companies are super open with us. They are not saying we need the best talents. We need some average talents, and it's totally okay.
Yeah, well, I think it starts at everything is the sharp tip of the spear. So we start with the sort of the best talent, but I think we go down to sort of the good talent, then to the average, and then even down to the mediocre talent who can actually do quite simple tasks, quite simple jobs. It's not going to set the world alight. But I think increasingly more and more of the workforce is moving towards a demand for more freedom and flexibility. So I think even to access the kind of okay talent now and certainly into the future, companies will have to be able to change their mindset and change their recruitment and partnership models.
So we were talking already a lot, and you told about those huge numbers, like 43 millions of independent or freelancers in Europe only. And I'm not even talking about the whole world. In the US, there are even more, much more independent talents. Yeah. And let's dive a little bit more into like let's say crystal ball. So how do you see the role of freelancers evolving, especially with all this AI and all these new technologies coming into our lives?
I think I'm very sort of glass half full on this. I think that there's so many jobs and roles that don't even exist now, which will be created by AI technology and new innovations. So in the same way that we don't say bad things about the fact that medicines stopped people dying and therefore put grave diggers out of jobs, I don't think we should be sort of worried about the fact that AI will sort of kill the jobs market at all. I think there's certain things that will be displaced. There will be certain needs and requirements will change thanks to technology. And I think that it's us as individuals to be able to reskill and upskill so that our knowledge and skills stay relevant and we have value for the market. That's one thing. But I also think that this symbiosis of us as individuals with the technology will make us much faster, much more efficient, much more productive, and also maybe take away some of the repetitive, boring tasks as well, and allow us to focus on the more high value, the more creative, the more interesting elements of our work and our roles. So I think that the upside is thus for there as individuals, and I think that whether you're an accountant, whether you're a video content producer, or if you're a speechwriter or a musician, I think utilizing the technology, the tools, and the applications that are there to augment your role, to augment how you can actually do things, either the depth, but also the breadth of tasks that you can take on thanks to technology. I think aligning with it is the way forward. But I also think that the surefire way to make yourself obsolete is to ignore the technological changes and the innovations in the market. That will mean that very, very quickly you will have a diminished value that you can actually offer to the marketplace and to companies. So I think that ignoring it is definitely not the way to go.
You never know, because I see there are so many companies that are still ignoring many things, but also as the history shows that they are not usually last long. If you could, okay, so let's focus a little bit on this part. So we were talking about starting working with freelance, like hiring them, dealing with all these agreements, parts, etc., etc. And I know that it's just the beginning. So sometimes many different blockers happens exactly when you start working, because of onboarding, because of integrating into the existing team. So companies treat like freelancers as someone, as an outsider, as someone there, like what do you do here? We have no idea. So if you could design the perfect system for integrating freelancers, what would it look like?
It would be a model whereby it would be a blended team and there would be openness from all parts of that team. The fact of trying to sort of ring fence certain parts of the organization, certain parts of the knowledge, certain part of the details for the project, which is kept out of the hands and heads and minds of the contractors and freelancers, is the wrong way to go, because basically you dilute the possibilities for them to be able to add value, but also the overall team and the overall product and that you can actually produce is severely limited by the fact that you're not open with your freelance talent. Treat them as a team, treat them as part of the team from the beginning on the specific project and also into the future. And there's maybe a sort of repeat work elements that can fall out from that original project. But I think it's really sort of something that is so limiting, and you see it time and time again that companies try and keep things internal and only bring on their freelance talent as an add-on, which means that they're working on sort of sometimes 30, 40, 50% knowledge, as opposed to having the full view of the details and the full aim of the product or the project. And basically the elements needed to be able to succeed.
Also, I know that there is a good practice when you are kind of like having a project manager, someone overseeing what's happening, and then you have part in your internal team, and then you hire freelancers also as a part of the general project, and they do not receive all the information, but they receive just enough information to work on their part of the project. And once again, talking to your point, not limited amount of information, but enough information to really deliver the good work. And also not all the information, because they don't really need to know about all the projects, because it also can move their attention to somewhere outside, and they don't have to focus on it. They have to do some specific task. And, you know, if we are talking overall about coming back to fast forwarding, to growing this independent talent economy faster, what one change do you think would accelerate trust and adoption of freelancers worldwide?
I think it would be having the right policy framework in place would certainly help. But I think also the business community having the right mindset as well, to say that this is no longer something that is strange or odd. It's on the same footing. We have a level playing field with our full-time employee brothers and sisters. I think this would be the sort of the greatest starting point. So this is something that can be utilized maybe on an ad hoc basis, but certainly something that is acceptable and open to all and can actually deliver value within projects and organizations.
You know, Glenn, I have so many questions and I wish to have the sky is the limit, but time is the limit. So the final one, what advice would you give to companies who are just start using freelancers and to freelancers who are just entering the market? I mean, like, it will be two advice.
Well, I think for actually both, it's the same. It's crawl, walk, run. Start small, build up trust, and develop from there. So in the company specific paradigm, think about sort of some areas where you're sort of missing talent or expertise. And think about the projects whereby you can actually sort of bring in specific talent who could be brought in. You don't want part of the overall headcount or the ongoing payroll, but they can actually be brought in to help out things that you maybe don't have time for, or you don't have the knowledge or expertise in-house to be able to do that, but it's something that's important. So that would be an area. And also with them as well, start small, start very concrete in terms of the project with a clear beginning, middle and end, and then be able to develop from there. Just test it and see what the results are that you can actually feed back. So I think trial by doing is the greatest way to basically get the organization, and particularly the C-suite, on board, is to say, we've done this, we spent this amount of money, look at the impact we've had from this investment. That will buy in internal users and cheerleaders, and it will go from there. And I think the same thing for individuals. If you're maybe in a full-time job or studying, whatever it is, and are thinking about a freelance lifestyle, don't go in with sort of both feet and jump into the cold water in December. Maybe start by a side hustle. Think about what you want to do. What is your passion? Where do you have knowledge, skills, and expertise that are actually valuable to the marketplace, what you can monetize, and think about the offer. And maybe start small as well, with maybe sort of a couple of partners or a couple of projects that you can do. Then from there, the word of mouth works very, very well. Be able to profile yourself with your peers and your network and your ecosystem through the work that you're doing, but also through social media channels, a website over time as well. So you seem, and this goes back to your point, Yurii, about seeing more professional and more real. So over time, people won't buy ideas and they won't buy dreams. They want sort of clear, hard facts that you know what you're doing and you're a serious professional, but also a serious professional who knows how to run a business. So the more professional and the more well put together you look, the more trust and you'll be able to engender with companies and organizations, but also you'll be able to build out your knowledge, your expertise, but also your brand to a broader stakeholder group. And I think this is something that's crucial as you build up over time on these elements.
We are talking about freelancer. It's clear who is responsible. You as a freelancer, yes. You are responsible for that. But if you are talking about the companies, there are many different titles and there are many different levels. And yes. People who are listening to this podcast, there might be CEOs, founders, recruiters, business growth manager, executive director, whatever, you name it. So from your experience, who is responsible for bringing independent talents, bringing freelancers inside? What their titles usually look like?
I think it's a mixture, and as you say, it's absolutely right, Yurii. It's not just one person. I think it's usually the business unit, a business unit head, or a project manager, or someone who's got a specific need or a specific pain point within the organization. Then it's also the public procurement or the procurement people within the organization. It's the legal department. It's the HR department, who sometimes feel a bit threatened because a lot of these decisions sometimes go to the business units and even the C-suite about how they should actually bring in the talent. And maybe it sometimes can be the side of the HR function. And it's very interesting that we still see these kind of things where permanent headcount goes through HR and is a silo apart from the kind of the businesses who have the sort of money and budget available for freelancers and contractors they need on specific projects and specific activities. And I think it's always interesting that there's still so many organizations that have these siloed approach to different type of workers, and you go through a very different stream and a very different channel if you have this label on your head, full-time employee, as opposed to a open talent solution.
Got it. I feel like there are so many roads to be created in this sphere, in this market. And I feel like that's exactly what we're working on right now. And last but not least, name 2 people I should reach out to talk about the independent workforce.
Oh, great question. I mean, I think that, Yourself, you've got Matt Matola as well that you already got involved in there. I think is really important to be able to speak to them about some of the developments that are going on right now. So I think you're covering a lot of the main bases already on this piece. I think that sort of more broadly than that, there's a lot of discussions that we've been having. I still see what John Wins is still doing a lot of great stuff on this field as well. He's got a lot of elements that we can sort of bring in. I think it would be good to have him all there. And also Elena Utilita, who runs the freelance business community in the freelance business month. And this is it now in October. I think are also interesting individuals to speak to get their thoughts, ideas, and because again, like us, they have a broad view of what's happening in different markets, but also speak to a lot of members of the freelancer community. So I think that would also be an interesting angle to bring to bear and share their thoughts and ideas here, Yurii.
And what is the best way to connect with you?
Best way to get to me is either via the website, send me a message on email, or else DMs over LinkedIn, X. Probably the best ways to get involved. And I read everything and I respond to everything. So be careful what you wish.
You know, Glenn, you're such a light in this, I would even say lighthouse in this world of freelance or world of independent. You are doing a lot of conversations. You are like bringing a lot of movements. You start a lot of movements. And I really, really appreciate that. And it's such a pleasure to talk to you every time. You have such a positive, exciting, Likewise. Interesting energy. And I'm just smiling every time I'm talking to you. So thank you so much for this conversation.
Be careful. I'll start to believe you and I'll get very arrogant and very conceited about these things, Yurii. But thank you for the kind words.
And yeah, see you in the freelance world. And for listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Independent Workforce. I hope you've taken one step closer to working smarter with freelance talent. If you enjoyed this conversation, subscribe to learn even more and share it with your colleague. And remember, the future of work is now.